let our reps, I'll let our reps who are online, I'm gonna let them introduce themselves and the employer that they're representing and a little bit about their background. So I see Delonda Burns. There she is. Hey, Delonda.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Um, Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Delonda Burns. I am here with Fannie Mae, representing our operations team. I've been with Fannie Mae 11 years. I have a long career in the finance, mortgage, and housing industry. So I look forward to talking and sharing with everyone today.
Great. Thank you, Delonda. And your colleague, Daphne.
Good morning, everyone, or I should say good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. Good afternoon.
Okay.
So yes, Delonda and I are colleagues. We both work for Fannie Mae. I am here representing Fannie Mae's Future Housing Leaders program. Similar to Delonda, I've been at Fannie Mae in double digits, but for 10 years, having been working in the housing industry for the last 10 and having started out in the talent acquisition space. And really, Future Housing Leaders is focused on sharing employment opportunities and connecting students to our employer partners for opportunities, internships, and full-time in the housing industry. So we're glad to be with you today. Thank you again for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. Now, Daphne and Delonda, are you all in the same city by chance?
No, I'm in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And I am in the Dallas, Texas area. Our office recently located, well, not recently, in the last couple of years, we moved to the Plano area versus the
Okay.
downtown area.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. Thank you. And we have Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Polikov. I'm with Koch Industries. We're the parent company of Georgia Pacific and I'm located in Atlanta, Georgia, so right next to Georgia State. So I pass Georgia State students in the building every day. I started my career in public accounting and tax and have been working for Koch Industries for 10 years. I started in the tax group there and then now work in more of a HR and recruiting support for the tax group.
Great.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And I will say that these employers are big partners, recruiting partners with Georgia State. So I'm really appreciative of that as well.
Yeah.
One more quick shameless plug.
Sure.
I actually lived in Columbus, Georgia for 10 years, so I know Georgia State.
Oh, so you know Georgia. So you're a Georgia Peach. You're gonna say you're a Georgia Peach.
Sure.
Okay. Great. Okay. Also, students, if you do have questions for our panelists, you're welcome to put them in the chat and we will present those questions to them as well. So without further ado, we'll get underway. I'm just going to start off with some questions and about virtual meetings. We know we're in this virtual space. We've been in it for quite some time. So we've had to make some adjustments to how we engage with employers and conduct business. So having said that, I'd like to just ask some questions and you all are free to weigh in on it. If you all three want to weigh in on it, that's great. If not, one can take the lead, that's fine. So the first question I'd like to ask, what are some of the things that should be a part of your virtual space when you're online?
So this meaning when you're like interviewing virtually?
Yeah, it could be a business meeting. You know, there may be just some informal meetings that students can conduct with employers or interview, or it could be attending a virtual fair, anything that's on a virtual platform. What are some of those key components that you need to be made aware of that you should have kind of in your toolkit?
I think just making sure, make sure your speakers are working, that you can hear well, make sure that that if you have roommates or pets, that you've really thought about like securing your pets or, telling your roommates, hey, I'm going to be on an interview. So really just making sure that you're going to be able to focus. I sometimes see people distractions that maybe they weren't anticipating, and it really throws them off their game, and they don't interview as well as they could have because they're very distracted. So I would say that's one of the biggest pieces. And also, don't have anything distracting in your background, because me as the interviewer, it is distracting if people are walking in and out or there's loud noises. I want to be able to focus on you. So really, it's limiting the distractions for me and for yourself.
And I would piggyback on that as well. Yeah, I was going to say that the distractions are very important. So we know our cell phones will buzz, we get alerts, we get chimes. So turn it off or put it on silent so you don't even pay attention to that. And then one of the things I took a course last year as we were coming into this, virtual dynamic, and it talked about your background because that is a distraction. So like I may not be paying attention to you. I may be looking at the books, or I may be looking at that dog that walked by the door, or so paying attention to what you have in your background. And I see some of us have the blur, some of us, having that virtual background, and sometimes not even having those fancy, funny ones makes sense, as well as a, paying attention. So participate in the conversation. If it's just a meeting, if it's an interview, listen to hear, not to respond, and then be interactive. So involved.
Anything from you, Daphne, before we move on?
No, I think, Leslie and Delonda covered it. And, very similarly, we're talking about things that you want to have, but really looking at maybe the things that you want to omit or be mindful of in your background. And as you can see here, I have the blurred background, which in a lot of cases, for students, you may not be able to set up the perfect background, or your space may have other things going on, being mindful of that. But instead of using all of the kind of fun backgrounds, it's a really simple thing that's really simple to do, is to use the blurred background. So for some people that may not have accessibility or be able to move around or such, like that's one of the easiest things that you can do to kind of make your background less of a distraction.
Thanks. Thank you. My next question is, and I often like to ask this of employers and recruiters, and just to get your feedback on it, is it appropriate to conduct a virtual meeting from your bedroom? I've heard different responses to that.
There are various thoughts about this, right? But I would say there are the occasions where you may not have an option, and that is the only place from which you can conduct the interview. So what you want to do is kind of be aware of your space and make that space as presentable and plain and clean, if that is going to be in your background. And if possible, if you are in your bedroom, you may want to, if you're able to, shift the direction of your monitor. So maybe sometimes it's not looking directly at the bed behind you, but maybe at another wall or space in your bedroom. But it's completely understandable that everyone may not have the option to move to a designated workspace, and that is your primary space, especially if you're living with roommates, where you do everything, but you just want to make it as presentable and less distracting as possible.
Interestingly enough, we had a conversation. So we have an employee resource group I happen to be the president of within Fannie Mae, and we did a conversation with a deputy mayor from the city of Los Angeles. And as we were preparing her office space just happened to be in her bedroom, her home office space, because she dominantly goes in. And so one of the things that I really liked was she had one of those screens, the folding screen that she actually set up in front of her bed. And she kept asking, okay, angles, can you still see the bed? Those things were important because that just happened to be where her home office was, and where her setup and her computer were. So sometimes, to Daphne's point, modifying your background as best you can, because again, if you live in dorms, your bedroom may be the only option.
Yeah. And we've had students do high review videos and you can tell that they are in their bedroom, but just make sure that your room also looks neat, or like it was mentioned, angle your camera so that you're, maybe not facing away. But certainly, unfortunately, I have had some where like the bed is unmade. You can tell that there's clothes everywhere. So that isn't the image that you want to portray. So if you do need, we understand that for many students, your bedroom is the only like private space that you have, but just be mindful of what's in your background and think about, okay, but given that, can I turn my desk around? Can I re-angle things so that, my unmade bed isn't in the background? Or if your bed is in the background, please make up your bed. So
Good point. Thank you. So this question is in regards to professional attire or your attire on virtual meetings. And we know a lot of people practice what I call half and half, what would you say about dressing half and half, or should you really just be dressed full, as if you're going out in person, but yet you're virtually conducting meetings? How important is that?
I was thinking about this a lot. For me personally, I do because we've been home for the last year and a half, however long time has just gone away. I tend to just kind of put on the workout clothes and get in front of the computer. For me, I won't even go to Walmart without getting fully dressed. So for me, my thoughts are head to toe all the way. Because one thing, and I'm sure everybody can attest to this, is how you dress and how you look kind of boosts your confidence and how you feel about yourself. So if you're wearing, just like I'm wearing a jacket, but I am wearing a dress. I did get fully dressed this morning for the first time in goodness knows how long, but being fully dressed kind of helps you and your attitude, your confidence, your presentation, even though they're going to only see you from here down. And we've seen the commercials and the memes where somebody accidentally stands up or the laptop falls and you see shorts or undergarments. And so for me, head to toe when you're going to be presenting yourself, because you want to represent yourself how you feel about yourself.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
one thing to consider too is I have seen people, don't assume you may not need to get up. What if your dog starts barking? What if you need to jump up and close the door? You don't want to put yourself in a position where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm wearing cat pajamas on the bottom. I'm going to be so embarrassed. And now you can't go handle maybe that distraction. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, suit pants, but you certainly want to think about, if I did need to jump up, what would show on camera. So it's just something to think about.
Right.
And I think that's a great point, Leslie and Delonda, because it's expect the unexpected.
Yes.
And, also if you've scheduled this time for this meeting or this interview, so think about it. It's not, maybe not all day that you're even going to be, in this particular outfit, but you're showing up for a purpose, for a particular meeting and event that you scheduled and put time and preparation into to be prepared for. So, and also in terms of being prepared for the meeting, it's also to expect the unexpected. And also just think about, we're in this virtual world right now, but this isn't necessarily forever, right? And so think about when you're going, it's like preparing you when you do go back into the office, you're in that workforce. So you're already in that natural kind of rhythm. This is how I want to show up. This is how I do show up for meetings. So this is your practice to get ready for that when you are in the workforce and engaged with other folks in person.
Right. Great. Those are great, excellent points. So go ahead.
Quick. One of the other things is see if you can find out the company you're interviewing with or meeting with, what is their dress code? So is it business casual? Is it, dress up, suit and tie? So pay attention to that as well.
Great. Great advice. So as you all are sharing these virtual protocols with us, I'm thinking about the camera. A lot of us can be camera shy, as we can see, on this session. How important, we know that you want to get in front of employers, but you can't get in front of employers with your camera off. Could you speak to that? How important it is to be camera ready and be present? You all touched on how to be present, speak to that, how important it is to really be present when you're engaging with employers virtually.
I'm going to jump in and say 100%. So especially if it's if you're attending a meeting or hosting a meeting, and especially if it is an interview, you need to have that camera on. There are so many things that you cannot communicate just by hearing someone. So because we're not able to be in person, it's really important for, employers or those that you're meeting with to be able to see your face expression, be able to react, and let them know that yes, you are present, you're attentive, you're being intentional, you're prepared, and you are serious, about this engagement. It's a little bit different in meeting settings. So like the setting that we're in now, a group meeting or event, I know there are different kinds of schools of thought about turning your camera on or off depending on levels of participation in a larger group type meeting. That can be more optional. I personally always opt to have the camera on. If someone's invited me to a meeting, they're expecting me to be there, unless there's specific instructions or something having to do with bandwidth or something like that. Plus, we like to see the faces, know who we're talking to get a better idea.
Yeah.
And I'll follow up with that. No matter my day, I do look at my calendar. So I have meetings all day, every day. And I pay attention to who the meeting is with and what the meeting is about. To Daphne's point, you never know who's going to be requiring you to be on camera. A former manager, she's in HR, and she's the one said, always be camera ready, even if it's just from the waist up. If you wear makeup, make sure your hair is done. Daphne and I met the other day, and I knew she was a camera ready person. So it's like, okay, let me make sure I'm camera ready for her, regardless to my day. So absolutely always be camera ready.
And I think sometimes students forget, I know that sometimes you feel shy, but it is really hard when you're a speaker and you are talking to a black screen. It's hard for me to know, like, are you following me? Do you have any questions? Are you looking to ask a question? And I can't read your body language to say like, oh, this person's ready to jump in. And so you can also really just miss out, on the nonverbal communication. And it's really hard for me as a speaker to just speak out to really, it feels like nothing. And I don't get that personal connection at all. So even though I know you're a little shy, just remember that, the speaker does want to get to know you.
And I would just quickly add on that when you're in a group setting, it can be that those who have the camera on tend to get more of the attention. Because I know when I'm in a meeting, I'm gravitating towards that person that I can see. So I'm like, oh, hey, Aaron, hey, Cameron, hey, Viral, hope I pronounced your name correctly. But, I'm looking for someone to give me some kind of, feedback. And as Leslie said, to let me know do you hear me? Do you have a question? Is there anything, I can provide? But just for that interaction, those cues that I won't be able to see if you're not on camera.
Yeah. And that was a good example, Daphne, with Cameron. When he came on, he waved, my reaction, I would wave. Even if he walked into a room, I would have done the same thing. So that was a great example of that. So, all right. So another question, this is in regards to interviewing virtually. So can you share just some of those, just in your interviewing one-on-one with an employer, some best practices with that as it relates to virtual interviewing?
I think make sure that the camera, similar to what we spoke about, but the camera angle is where you want it. Make sure you're looking into the camera. I have seen times where I think students maybe have something up on their screen, or maybe their camera is kind of high up. So they're looking at the screen to see the person they're talking to, but the way it looks is that they're looking off screen. And you're like, it'd be the same if you were talking to somebody in person. You're like, well, what is he looking at? Like, it makes you want to look over there too. So just think about that angle, because it does feel more like a face-to-face real conversation when you're not looking off. And I know sometimes people want to have their resumes up. I've seen some students in the virtual space, like they've tried to anticipate questions and have typed up answers.
Yeah.
No, like, don't read a script. Don't sound like you're reading off the page. I had somebody I interviewed who just pulled up my company's website. And when I was like, oh, what interests you about Cook Industries? They started reading verbatim from the website. And I was like, oh, you know, I know what the website says. So just something to think about is like, you want to make it feel like you're in person and that you're truly engaged, which I think, the other presenters have mentioned that level of engagement. And you want to feel like, hey, we're having a conversation here and I'm getting to know you and why you would be a great fit for my organization.
And I think on that, I would piggyback and say practice.
Mm.
Know the information, know what you want to convey because you never know what's going to be asked. One of the things that she was just sharing, I think for me, I have two monitors. So because of the work that I do, I have a monitor here and then I have a monitor here. So this is my monitor where I have most of my documentation, but I don't want to look away. I want to pay attention. Like Leslie said, you're thinking, okay, what is she looking at? Well, this is this monitor over here. One of the tips that I also think is you should know your resume. You should know the company you're interviewing with. But for me, the little sticky notes that come on the computer, not the paper ones, I actually can post them on this monitor here, and I can still be looking at you for my questions. So make sure you come prepared with questions that you may have. And so you don't forget them, have them somewhere where it's visible, camera visible, so you can ask them, but you look like you're not look like you are paying attention with what you want to know.
And in terms of also just being prepared, remember this is a human interaction, and it typically is a human thing to extend greetings, some kind of salutation. So if someone, says good morning, you don't just have to be surprised or kind of stand there like with a blank stare. It is interactive, you are kind of setting the tone. You don't have to just dive right in, to your speech. And then it's also has to do with quieting your nerves and just allowing yourself maybe that. I think one thing is important coming into an interview is give yourself some buffer, some breathing room. If your meeting or interview is at 10 o'clock, don't just get in front of the computer a minute before. In terms of preparation, at least allow yourself 15 minutes to make sure you're settled, you're prepared, you're calmed and ready to engage, as you would in an in-person setting. So good morning is always, welcome. If someone asks you, how are you? Of course, you don't have to give them the whole rundown, but, kind of practice those typical norms that are okay to do, because it really sets the tone for this particular engagement that you're going to have. But give yourself that grace period. I know some things happen, but remember, expect the unexpected. So expect that there's going to be a technical issue. You're going to need those couple minutes or 5 minutes, and you don't want it to be, oh my gosh, my interview's starting now and I'm, all discombobulated and disheveled.
Definitely.
And I know Leslie,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Leslie shared it a little bit earlier. So when you're on camera, um, I'm being interactive sometimes with the nod and with the smile. So that's important too. So not just to have that stoic face, but kind of just in agreement, nodding, smiling as best you can when you're not in a position to speak up or say anything in those moments.
That's great. That's a very good point. Very good point. Yeah. Thank you for that. Also, when it comes to virtual meetings, there are different devices you can use. I'll say that. What would you recommend? If someone was initiating a meeting, the best software platform or the device that you feel that would be more effective in conducting that meeting or session virtually?
For me, absolutely not a cell phone. Sorry, Leslie. Not a cell phone. Don't use a cell phone. An iPad works, but I think what device gets the best reception? So in my home, I can say that I have an app that tells me how many devices are on my Wi-Fi, and so sometimes I have to cut those off in order to get the best reception. And sometimes the home computer or my laptop doesn't. So for me, it's always a laptop when it's an important meeting. Um, Depending on the meeting, I can take it, on my cell phone when I know I don't have to be on camera if I have something else I have to do from my manager. But for me, it's a laptop, whatever gets the best reception so you don't lose connectivity. Never a cell phone.
Never. Good point.
The camera angles just tend to be very awkward on a cell phone. And then I've seen people try to prop it up, it falls over. The image is so small, they can't really see you very well. So, and if you don't, for whatever reason, if you don't have a laptop, I would work with the Career Service Center or talk to the school or just see, is there a device or an area that has Wi-Fi that, will allow you to do video and have quality video. Because if you're cutting in and out and you spend a lot of that 1 hour interview, for example, dealing with technology issues, we're not going to get to know enough about you to make a hiring decision. And that, can really hurt your chances of getting the job.
Yeah.
And also, if it's not a meeting that you're hosting, or if it is a meeting that you're hosting, just go back and revisit the platform. Make sure you're familiar with the tools on the platform or the device, so that you're not, again, to Leslie and Delanda's point, fumbling with things and trying to figure it out as the interview or the meeting is taking place. And if it's a meeting that someone else is hosting and they've invited you to participate in, again, make yourself familiar with that platform prior to the meeting so you understand how it works. You know what needs to happen prior to joining the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm going to take a pause here. If some students out there in virtual land, you have some questions so that you can virtually engage and show off some of your skills here to our panelists. If you have questions, you can come off the mic and ask those questions.
Hey there.
Hi.
Salutations. Good, I guess, good afternoon. I guess I just wanted to say one thing that I have heard the first week of my business communications class was how you're sitting goes a long way. And I've just never thought about this in my life. And I thought, since we're all here, I might as well just bring it up again because it's my favorite. So a camera angle is important, right? But sitting on the edge of your chair, like on the tip of your chair, so that your shoulders do come forward. And maybe this camera doesn't, I just bought this camera, so it's very, very new. Very proud of it. You can see my pores, they're great. But yeah, sitting on the edge of your chair is supposed to straighten up your back just a little bit so your shoulders don't come over slumped when you're interviewing. And I mean, I'm not going to say that's going to make or break the interview, but I did find it very interesting because posture is very hard to do when you've kind of been sitting at a computer all day long, or regardless of what it is you're doing. So that's all I have on my end. This is I've never done one of these before, so very, very interesting panel. So thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm going to agree with that. For me, it's very similar to how you dress. So sitting up straight is going to enhance your posture, your attitude, everything that you're conveying. And then again, making sure, and you did a great job trying to adjust because the top of your head was initially cut off. So adjusting, making sure you're centered and focused. And for me, I recently purchased a standing desk. So that has helped tremendously as far as I'm not, slumped over. The standing desk has made the space that I'm in, more confident, more positive when I'm in a meeting. So absolutely.
And Delonda brings up a great point, because there are many people who choose to stand just because they feel like they can communicate, better, express themselves. And it just gives them a different sense of confidence in terms of what they're presenting and how they're answering. But it's also important to be mindful of your space and how you are using your hands and your gestures. And I agree with the posture. So I'm fortunate to have a really great office chair that really helps, enables my posture. But you know, and also it is important because it just portrays a certain image, the way you're sitting, if you're slumped over or if you are ready, you know, I'm here to engage with you, to talk. People, all of that matters because your visuals are those are those cues. Like that's all we have initially. This is all I'm able to see. So everything that I'm seeing is another little piece of the puzzle. It's part of the whole picture. It's telling me something, you know, about you. So if I'm kind of just, you know, sitting like this, you see the difference where maybe I'm a little tired, I'm not as, you know, engaged, that automatically kind of sends some different signals where if I'm back and I'm ready and I'm listening and I'm nodding, as, you know, Delonda said, you know, those cues, you know, I'm hearing you, I understand, I'm engaged, I'm, you know, I'm looking forward to interacting with you. So you're absolutely right, Cameron. All those things matter: posture, how you look, how you feel, and just being really conscious of it, because a lot of these things, they're not, the more you do it, the more habit forming it is. So, you know, every time you're coming in for an interview or meeting, you're like, I'm going to get ready. You know, I'm here, I'm listening, just as if I were here, you know, if I were with you in person. The things that I wouldn't be doing then in person, I don't want to be doing virtually either, because it's even more heightened and you're really just focused on this picture, you know, on the screen. So anything that you can do to, you know, position yourself better is always encouraged.
Okay, great, thank you. So I just saw a question in the chat from Linda Lee. Linda, did you want to come on camera to ask that question, or did you want me to ask that question?
Thanks, Wanda. Yes, sure, I'll ask. You know, I was curious what the panel thought about lighting. So, you know, how important is lighting? You know, you see some interactions where maybe the light is coming from behind the individual where you can't really see their facial expressions. I've seen that in an interview. I was curious what the panel might think about that.
I mean, I think the main thing is, like you said, we wouldn't want it so that we can't see your face, but it's beyond that. I don't think too much about it. It's just, I don't want anything that would make it so there's a shadow and I can't really see your facial expressions. That would be my only concern about the lighting.
Yeah, I agree. But I think for me, from both questions, in essence, it's think about taking a selfie. So how would you want to look if you took a selfie? Your lighting is important to you, your angles are important to you. If it was a selfie, how would you make it right?
And I would say also, specifically lighting is something that I personally struggle with all of the time. So I've had backlighting, I've had uplighting, I've had side lighting. And then sometimes there are things that, you know, as long as you have you're in a lit room, you know, I think that's what's most important. And again, if you just look at yourself and see, you know, how do I look? And again, practice, you know, with someone. You know, if you get on camera, you know, really quickly, like ask someone, how do you see me? How does this look? Because two sets of eyes are better than one. But just getting that feedback from others prior to, you know, engaging.
One thing I did want to make sure I mentioned is if you do have nervous habits, so if you know that when you get nervous, you're a nail biter, if you know you're a pin clicker, you bounce your leg. And I do understand. I mean, it can be really scary if you're not used to interviewing, but just make sure you remember those and think about, if you're a nail biter, like, do I need to sit on my hands or place them on the table, or make sure I do not have a pin anywhere near me, because if it's near me, I'm going to click it over and over. Just think about if you do have those nervous habits that maybe aren't there all the time, but in an interview setting would emerge. It's just something to think about, because we want you to, you know, we really do want you guys to shine. And that's a problem with nervous habits. We, the interviewers, get distracted too. And I'm like, oh, what was I saying? I was just listening to this pin click, 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 and I lost track of what I was asking you.
It's interesting you should say that, Leslie. I'm a swayer, And so typically if I'm in a meeting, I'm swaying. So I am intentionally holding my ground right now to not, sway because it's distracting. So
Those are very, very good points. It's something to think about because we do these nervous habits unintentionally. It's part of our day to do it. So we have to be conscientious now when we're in front of a formal setting. So it's great. So are there any other questions from students out there that you'd like to ask our panelists? Please feel free to unmute. Go ahead.
So I just had my first career fest last week on Friday, and we've got one coming up again this Friday. And there's a lot of one-on-one 10-minute sessions. And what I found is that time just flies by in those 10 minutes. And I didn't know what, the important things to squeeze in those 10 minutes were, because I feel like I'd ask a question about the company and then they'd never really get to ask a question about me. I just wanted to know what your opinions were on the most vital things to squeeze in a 10-minute interview.
That's good. Very good.
I've had a few people where I really liked it. They kind of upfront thought about what they wanted, because sometimes you can't say, oh, tell me about your company. And they spend 8 minutes telling you about their company, where one way, if you already know what your questions are, you could say, hello, my name is Leslie. I've already done some research on your company. I had a few questions today. I really wanted to understand, what opportunities you have for accounting majors, when your spring internships begin, and what your selection process is like. So that way, maybe up front, they kind of almost have an agenda of like, hey, this is what he really wants to know about. And then I'd already know, like, you already went to our website, so I don't need to go over those details because you already did a little bit of research before coming in. So I think you can politely do that when they introduce yourself, say, hey, so I'm a major, and today I was really excited and hoping to ask you a few questions about A, B, and C.
one of the things I think is important in addition to that is it's called, and you can Google it, there's different tips and tricks, but your elevator pitch. So if you were in an elevator with an executive, what is your elevator pitch? So you want to represent yourself. So 20 to 30 seconds, tell them about you, and then go into the dynamics of what your focus is and then what you want to learn from them. So I always think about an elevator pitch when you're meeting anybody. Again, you could wind up in the elevator of Elon Musk. You never know who, so you're going to meet. So represent yourself and then be prepared to ask questions.
And
sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go, Daphne. Sorry, Miss
Thanks,
Miss
Cameron.
Womack, sorry.
Please, Daphne, it's fine. I would say also introduce yourself, because oftentimes we may have your resume or information and I may not know how to pronounce your name. And that is your opportunity to introduce yourself and let the person on the other end know how to pronounce your name. You're making it a little bit easier for me. You're also saving us time. So I don't have to say, hi, it's so-and-so, or just kind of the awkwardness of that sometimes, but always be confident, introduce yourself. This is, who you are. And, as Leslie said, have your agenda. What are the most critical things that you want to get out of this meeting? What is it that you really need to know? And that's letting me or anyone else know that, this person came prepared. They've done their research, they have an agenda, and you're also making it easy for me as well. So I don't have to try to dig out and figure out what it is that's going to be helpful to you, because I want to be an added value. I need to get something out of this also. And if you're making it easier for both of us, we know how much time we have. You've come to the table, you're ready. It's also just very professional in terms of like the way you conduct meetings. You have an agenda. That says a lot about you right out of the gate in terms of how you conduct yourself, that you are professional, you are ready. I'm going to have things that I, have on my agenda that I want to get to as well, but it's a lot more about me hearing from you also. So like, you don't just have to wait for the employer to kind of throw you softballs and like ask you questions and then you respond. Be very proactive. Don't be afraid to be proactive.
Thank you for that. All of those were great, great points. So do we have any other questions from students? This is a great virtual engagement exercise in itself, you know.
Can you tell that these are two cats? Okay, so we should remove them from the room. They're quarantine kitties. They're Buster and Rhymes, and they're really, really, really adorable. But if that's probably not the most professional, I understand.
Because if they were to wake up and move and start scratching, that's a
They're
distraction.
cuddle monsters for sure. All right, noted.
Now,
And-
if you're on a meeting and the focus is animals or rescues, or, you know, the subject matter is what I did during COVID, how they came, absolutely, frame of reference, here they are, you know, you can contribute to the conversation. But again, be mindful of the environment, be mindful of the engagement, what you're focused on, who your audience is, and then just go from there.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it's almost the interviewer becomes too interested in your cats and they're like, oh my gosh. And then it's like, oh, quarantine kitties, and I got one. And then we use, 30 of your 45 minutes talking about how adorable your cats are. And then the interviewer got distracted. And then, I mean, we've had those where you get to the end, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't learn enough about this person to make a hiring decision about an internship. But I know all about, Busters and Rhymes. So, so it's also, I mean, we can be distracted too. So, you don't want to not get to what you want to talk about, because we get, so interested in some of those other personal life things that really don't have much to do with you finding out if you want this internship or if you want this job. So.
That's an excellent point, Leslie. Excellent point. And also, I'm here thinking about these best practices, not only using them in a business setting, we can use them in our personal setting as well, these virtual protocols, because I conduct a Zoom meeting every month with my sorority sisters, and I can still apply these same tips in that way as well. Wouldn't you all agree with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, there are, different environments, different types of meetings, but a lot of it also comes down to showing respect.
Yes.
And when you're, respect for someone's time, that they are joining you, and just not making any assumptions, right? So even in personal, I can't, if Leslie and Delonda and I were getting together having a conversation, as Delonda mentioned, I come camera ready, but I also come because I'm looking forward to this. I want to see your face. I want to set a certain expectation. Like, yes, I was prepared for this meeting. I'm not taking for granted that because I know you just have, unlimited time, or, you have nobody else, to meet with. So just as you are in your professional environment, be respectful, of your friends, right? Or others that you may be engaging with, in group meetings outside of, work. You don't have to treat everything like an interview, but just kind of, some, key things to think about.
Very good. Anyone else would like to weigh in on that?
I think that is one thing that sometimes students are like, what difference does it matter what I'm wearing or where I am? It's really about me as a person. Mm-hmm. And the way you present yourself, though, you are sending cues, nonverbal cues to the interviewer, the person you're talking with. When you're hunched over and it's like, you look like you're kind of bored, like, oh, I'm doing this because I have to. Or when you don't dress like you're ready for the meeting, it does sort of say like, I don't have a lot of respect for your time. I'm not that excited about this opportunity. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. It really does send messages. Whether you really feel that way or not, you are sending nonverbal messages to the person on the other end about like how interested you are, how much you care, how much you want to be there.
Great, thanks.
And I think, Wanda, can I just add that no matter how many times we do these virtual meetings or have engaged over the past year and a half, there is always something to be learned through like every engagement, every meeting. And it's really kind of important to go back and revisit those things that you learned from the last meeting and how am I going to apply it going forward. But there are also two questions kind of want to think about. And one is, why am I doing this? So even prior to either applying, accepting the meeting and the engagement, confirm with yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why did I accept this opportunity? Kind of understand that for yourself and know that for yourself. And once you do accept and commit to the opportunity, one, it's important to keep that commitment, right? And show up and be present. But also remember, in this virtual environment, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And those first impressions matter. They stay in our minds, even more so because we're all so focused on this here. But just kind of think about those things as you prepare for these engagements.
Right. I understand we have a student that raised their hand in the chat. Would you like to ask your question? Come on camera and ask your question, please.
Yes. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So my question was about the background. So what would you say if the student chose to use like the company logo, like if you're interviewing for, I don't know, Nike or Apple, you had the Nike swoosh or the Apple logo and behind them. That may show like support for the company. Does that look professional in the interview and like show how eager that the student is for the company?
That one's a little interesting because there's probably like some underlying copyright infringement problems on that. I don't know that it's going to have a big impact. I mean, we mainly want to see you interact with you. So I don't know that I would be all that impressed or negatively impacted by the background, but you might want to think about there are some copyrights. So certainly if you're certain roles where copyright and potentially copyright infringement could be a problem, it's just something to think about.
I can second that. Absolutely what Leslie said.
I have a question. Can you pronounce your name?
Me?
Yes.
Okay. It's pronounced V roll Barot.
V roll Barot.
Yes.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Great. And I see some engagement there in the chat about drinking water. I was going to pose a question for that. Now, we know when we're in a professional setting in person, we wouldn't eat or drink in a professional meeting or interview. And that should carry over into this virtual environment because we're at home now. We think that we can lax and kind of sit there and munch on, some chips and water while we're conducting these meetings. How would you speak to that?
So I can say that the initial question was usually talking too fast when you're nervous. And for me, it's the pause, deep breath in between sentences. That helps that nervousness or that fast talking. I tend to be the same person. I talk fast and I'll overshare before I allow a question to come in. So it's like, state your question, pause, and then state your next in order for there to be time. If there's a question or whatever you're conveying, that gives you a little time because I did take a sip of water. So sometimes that sip of water is good, but definitely not eating. So
Right.
for me, it's pause, prepare, pause, and relax.
Very good.
I would say
Anyone else?
absolutely no eating, and then if you're drinking, I would just recommend like just have it be water, whether in a glass or like a water bottle. But I think that's fine. And that is a trick sometimes when people are nervous. I have said like maybe just consciously think about like, let me say a few things and then take a sip just so you have to slow down for a second.
I definitely echo the sip because back in the day when we were in the office and conducting interviews, one thing was customary was to offer water when
Yes.
candidates come in for an interview. So we did do that. But the other thing is when you're talking for an extended period of time, your mouth may just get dry, and you need that sip of water, just to keep yourself hydrated and keep going, because then it can become more awkward when your mouth is dry and then you're trying to continue this conversation.
Great. And on that note, I will give you all a demonstration because I do need a drink of water. So great. Thank you. That was great. Any other questions from our students? I see there are a lot of resources. Our panelists have been providing a lot of feedback and resources in the chat. Thank you all for that, Leslie, Yolanda, and Daphne. Any other questions that we have? I think we've covered a lot. I don't know if you all as panelists could think of anything else. I think we've covered the gamut on a lot of the navigating this virtual space. You can think of anything in closing?
I know that higher view has become way more common, where you're getting those higher view videos where you're recording a response to questions. And so I was interested if anybody had any questions about that, or wanted to talk a little bit about those. We certainly could talk a little bit about that. It's similar to the interactive, but it also certainly is different because it's one-sided and you're recording responses.
Okay.
So it's a media streaming platform that allows you to pre-record answers to questions in an area where maybe you don't feel as much under pressure or you don't stutter so much.
No, higher view is a pretty common tool where companies say they review your resume. They're like, "Ooh, I'm really interested in learning more about Cameron." So they push out an invitation for you to do a higher view video. And in that, you're asked, you see the question on the screen, and then you record a response in 2 minutes or less, and then you go on to the next question. And you generally have 2 chances to record your answer. So if I don't know, if your cat jumps into the screen on the first one, then you have that second chance. But it is one-sided in the sense of like, you're just reading a question and then you're recording a response to it. And then you submit that recording to the company, and then the company is reviewing that. So I review numerous higher view videos where I'm like, okay, let me watch their responses. And then we make a decision on, okay, yes, we would like to interview this person further and move them to the live interview portion of the process. So that I mean, not all companies use it, but it has become quite common. I would say probably 50% of the places that you will interview now utilize higher view in some portion of the selection process.
And with that, I would say practice makes perfect. So you have your cell phones, record yourself so you can see any tips or things that you do that are quirky that you may not like. I think Daphne said it earlier, come in advance so you're prepared. Again, how you dress, how you sit, that's going to also portray your confidence in interviews, meetings, whatever the case may be in this virtual space. So just be prepared, practice, and breathe.
Yes. Yes. Any other questions from students that you'd like to come and ask our panelists? Okay. Well, if not, we will wrap this up. My takeaways are preparation, practice, as Delonda said, and professionalism. So I'm going to stay in that alliteration track a little bit there to remember the 3 Ps for me. But you guys have been great. Leslie, Delonda, Daphne, extraordinaire. Thank you so much. You all are virtual experts here, I see. So we definitely got the right ones on the panel here. Very good responses. I know the students, I can see the chatter going on in chat. Really thank you all for your feedback and putting your resources and your opportunities there in the chat. Thank you all, your students, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I hope this has been a big help to you all, and have a great day and a great week.
Thank you all. It was great to meet you.
Thank
And
you.
I'll be in touch with our panelists.
Thank you
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good day.
Have a great
Thank
week.
you. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.